Once upon a time, there was a little boy by the name of Hansel, and he had a sister by the name of Gretel. Now, Hansel and Gretel lived at the edge of the forest with their mother and father. Now, they were very happy. Everybody was doing very well. And then one day, a terrible thing happened. Their mother died. And Hansel and Gretel cried and cried and cried and cried and cried, and their father cried and cried. And then several months passed, and their father came home with a new wife. At first, Hansel and Gretel were very happy to have a stepmother. They hoped she would take good care of them, just like their real mother did. Now, this woman was all right, but not a very nice person. But things were going very well as long as their father was able to cut down trees to make wood to sell in town. Now, people used his wood to make houses and beds and chairs and tables and everything else you could think of out of wood. And that's how he had money to buy groceries. Then their stepmother became very nervous, and she started to think about what were they going to eat, because she was worried they would run out of food before her husband could go back to work. So she started to bother her husband every day. And she would say, "If only you'd get rid of your children. If only you would get rid of your children. If only you'd get rid of your children, we would have enough to eat." And she said this to him over and over and over again, day after day after day. If only you'd get rid of your children. If only you'd get rid of your children. If only you get rid of your children, then we would have enough to eat. And she even started bothering him at night when she wouldn't let him sleep. And finally he said, "Enough, woman! Stop telling me to get rid of my children. How do you expect me to get rid of my children? I can't do that." She said, "Well, if we would get rid of our children, your children, we would have enough to eat." And she kept disturbing him. And finally he said, "All right. Will you, if I promise to get rid of my children, will you let me sleep?" She said, "Yes." He said, "How do you expect us to get rid of my children?" She said, "Well, I have a plan. Tomorrow morning we will take the children into the forest, and we will have them cut down the trees with us. And then at high noon, when they get very tired and the sun is very hot, we will stop and give them sandwiches and milk. And then I'm sure they'll fall asleep. And after they're sleeping, we will leave them alone in the forest." He said, "Woman, I cannot do this." She said, "Well, then you can't sleep, because I'm going to continue bothering you until you agree." So she continued bothering him. "If only you get rid of your children." And finally he said, "All right, enough, enough. I will agree to your plan. Now let me sleep." "All right, I will let you sleep." So the father went to sleep, and so did the stepmother. And the next morning they got up and they woke up Hansel and Gretel and made them get dressed and took them into the forest with them and forced them to cut down the trees with them, which of course was very hard for two little children. And then, as the sun was hottest at high noon, they sat down. They gave Hansel and Gretel some sandwiches and milk, and they ate and drank, and of course they were very tired, so they fell asleep. And while they were sleeping, their father and stepmother left them in the forest.